that'll be fun. I've got a few. Yeah, I work at 16th Street. Chemsex is my field, I guess. But I don't work in the substance misuse sector. I work in the sexual health sector. And I think it's weird for me because I'm never sure whether I should be talking to HIV or sexual health services or I should be talking to drug services. But it's definitely one of those things that kind of needs us all to work really kind of creatively together. I think it's probably a good idea to start with sort of a definition, I guess, of what chemsex is and I guess how drugs have evolved gaming. I think when you use heroin or crack, we all use different drugs for different purposes, and you all know that. I've got the right audience for that. When people don't use heroin and crack to go out and have a laugh, they don't use heroin and crack to have a good time, have a dance, have a good shag. It serves a very distinct purpose, and it's quite often about like nursing historical trauma or numbing self blows and stuff like that. It can kind of be almost like an isolating high people are looking for, just to feel safe and okay. And I guess, forgive me for doing stereotypes, but if you were going to picture a stereotype, it might be a heroin user in the corner of, let's say, a drug den, perhaps injecting him or herself with heroin and feeling safe and good. And exactly what they're using the drug for. And it's not a social thing, it's a very isolating kind of thing, and that's what they want the drug to do. And you see, gay men have never used heroin and crack cocaine in large numbers. Really low numbers, in fact. They've always preferred party drugs. Things that like ecstasy and cocaine and MDMA and stuff like that. In really quite large numbers. And the reason might be, I don't know, if you're the only gay in the family, which is quite often the case, or the only gay at school, or that you know about, the only gay in the village, then you don't want a drug that's going to isolate you further, because that's kind of an isolating kind of experience anyway, being the only one, and when you're actually looking for a community or other. So obviously, if you're looking for a drug for self-purpose, you're going to look for the drugs that facilitate connection and help you able to dance and be part of a community and to commune with others, and to give you confidence and things like that. And that's why gay men have kind of favored those kind of party drugs. So if you want to picture that stereotype, it's a gay man with a shirt off on a dance floor, taking party drugs and socialising and communing and being part of a community, and that's played a really important role. So it's kind of, you could also, gay communities kind of could be very defensive about the right to do drugs, because through some very difficult years of social homophobia, an AIDS crisis that's lasted decades, and all these kind of traumatic times, and equal rights and stuff. Drugs have served a purpose that have helped them find communities and feel confident to be part of those communities. So you're talking about a community that kind of owns their drug use kind of defiantly. And you can feel that when you're talking to some of them sometimes. But I was talking about ecstasy and cocaine and MDMA and stuff like that, and those drugs are not enormously problematic drugs. I think during the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, when those drugs were really taking off in gay communities, we did see a lot of those guys using those drugs. They were using for dancing, but they were using for sex as well, in really large numbers. I promise you that you might not watch them doing, but they were doing lots of these drugs for sex. But what we didn't see during the 80s, 90s and 2000s were lots of gay men rushing to A&E with withdrawal symptoms, with overdoses from ecstasy, with addiction problems. We didn't see them rushing to drug services saying, help me, I'm addicted to ecstasy, or help give me my needles for my MDMA or anything like that. So we didn't see large numbers. What we also didn't see was increases in HIV and sexually transmitted infections directly attributable to those drugs in large numbers. That's kind of, I guess, why the Home Office calls them non-problematic drugs. But something was changing. Something changed around the early 2000s, 2005. It wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just an introduction of new drugs. A few things were changing. HIV was changing. I mean, it wasn't like the scary 1970s when being gay was wrong and the police would raid the gay bars and things like that. It wasn't. The AIDS and HIV was really scary. It traumatized a whole community of people. But what it also did is it made sex all about risk and danger. And we as a health sector were quite comfortable to deliver that message. We had to say, careful gay community and supporters, your sex is about risk and danger. Take that message home. Take that message to heart. Take that message into the bedrooms with you, please. And they did. And it helped us keep HIV under control to an extent. But it also became a problem. But HIV was changing a little bit in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, around about 2000s. It was changing in regard to the care was getting so much better. So gay men's attitudes to HIV was changing. Sometimes it was less fearful or more highly stigmatized, just in flux all the time. But HIV prevention was getting more complicated because once upon a time, a condom was a simple message. It helps you not catch HIV or not transmit it to someone else. That's all you need. That's a really easy message for a health service to deliver to a large population of people at risk. But of course things were changing. HIV prevention was now also about PEP. So if you didn't use a condom, you could go, everyone knows what PEP is. PEP is that medicine you take if you've had an exposure to HIV. You take it within 3 days, it pretty much guarantees you will not catch HIV. So I mean, PEP awareness in gay communities was pretty good in some cities. It was very, very good in London. And availability is very good too. So that's another tool besides the condom that you can know to help prevent HIV. There's also treatment as prevention. So in London, I want to say nearly all, it's not quite so, but at most, I'll say most, quite confidently, most gay men who are diagnosed with HIV and know it are on treatment and undetectable, meaning if they had sex with you today without a condom, you can't catch the virus from them. So that was changing in HIV prevention too. And of course now there's PrEP, which isn't available everywhere, but a lot of people are buying it online. PrEP is another HIV prevention medicine. If you take this medicine as an HIV negative person, consistently during periods of sexual, like if you're sexually active for 2 years before you find a boyfriend and marry and start behaving something like that, then you're not going to catch HIV, you don't use condoms as well. So I mean, HIV prevention is getting really complicated. If you got confused, just me telling you that, imagine what it's like if you need to know that when you're having lots of sex and you're not a health professional. So, I'm going on a bit. HIV prevention is getting more complicated. So the gay men who had all these tools that they need to take into the bedroom, as well as negotiating the fact that they were taking risk and danger into the bedroom every time they had sex, were struggling with this change. But another thing was changing too, and that was technology. Suddenly you had Grindr and Gaydar and all these other apps which sort of really changed the way gay men had sex. There was a time when you'd go up to Hampstead Heath or to a public toilet like George Michael and have sex there. It was all kind of shameful and naughty, and but I'm sure those are fun too. But technology changed all that. Suddenly, on your smartphone, you can find a shag next door, really, really fast. But it didn't come with an instruction book of any kind. We just had to sort of adopt it. And it did kind of take people out of the public toilets, and it did kind of take people out of public parks and sort of change their cruising attitude. And that's a good thing. But you were suddenly needing to communicate your sexual and emotional needs in 140 characters using abbreviations you never heard of, with a picture of you with abs, which I probably was used 6 years ago at a party when you haven't used that picture, or you haven't used any current picture since. And it's kind of, you're selling something really, you're actually kind of selling sexual confidence really, really briefly and quickly, and suddenly you're in bed with a stranger trying to do something that's really intimate, really vulnerable, where you need your vulnerabilities, when you need communication skills, and when you need a connection. And they only know you by your profile name, and they'll be disappointed that those abs you had 6 years ago aren't there in the room, stuff like that. So I mean, I do wish that the Grindr had come with an instruction booklet that said, here you go, it's a great thing, it's going to take you out of public parks, but we need to give you some education around how to use this, how to communicate your needs, how to be aware of what you want from sex, and how to communicate that to someone else, and that it's okay to be vulnerable, to be nervous, to take your clothes off with a stranger. Unfortunately, a kind of culture has developed on these apps where you can get rejected really easily. You get rejected if you're the wrong race, if you don't have abs, if you're too camp, you get rejected if you don't sell yourself right, or if you're, in some cases, in some cities on certain days, you get rejected if you don't do drugs. So you do need a whole lot of set of communication skills. So it's become the health sector's job to embed into our health promotion. So what do you think? HIV prevention is changing, technology was changing, and the third thing, 3 new drugs, newish drugs. They landed almost overnight, really, bang in the lap of a population of people that were defensive and sort of were owning their drugs already. Crystal methamphetamine, methadone, and GHB, GBL. These drugs were they were changing so many things, because it wasn't just that the drugs were available. They were available differently. I mean, if my sister came from Australia to London, and I was going to be concerned about the likelihood of her getting into drugs, she'd probably have to land the plane, as if she was driving the plane or something. She'd have to arrive, get off the airport, she'd probably have to find somewhere to live, get mixed up with a group of friends. Hopefully she wouldn't get mixed up with a group of wrong friends. Network in real time that way. Eventually try some drugs, be introduced to them, eventually get introduced to a dealer. And that's quite a long journey and process for needing a whole lot of circumstances to happen. But if my little gay brother gets off the plane, he's got to be on Grindr before he exits the airport, maybe, knowing my little brother. And he could be off the chems immediately. So drugs are not just more available, more commonly used, but they're made available not through dealers and real-time networks, but they're available right there. So it kind of really introduced a population of people that really like drugs and owned them or were defensive about them to new, scary drugs and much more quicker. And those drugs, also like Grindr, didn't come with this warning that I would have liked to have said, careful though, gay men, here's some new drugs, but be careful because you need a lot more skills to manage these drugs safely, because they are a lot more harmful. So all of those things were all happening around the same time, around about early 2000s. And what we did see changing was more gay men going to accident emergency departments with overdoses, with withdrawal symptoms, with drug-induced psychoses. We saw them going to drug services with addiction problems, needing needles because of more injecting than, according to public health. England, more gay men who are injecting than ever before in recorded history. We also saw more increases in HIV and sexually transmitted infections attributable to these drugs directly and in really, really large numbers, to the point that it was starting to manifest as a public health concern. And that was chemsex. So what it looks like is these drugs have long half-lives. People, that's kind of why gay men have adopted these drugs, and they really, really have. And it's really hard for someone. I've worked with gay men and drugs for about 10, 12, 15 years, and I hardly see anyone using ecstasy or even cocaine anymore. They're kind of like dumped this. Even alcohol has gone down for people favouring these drugs. It's really tapping into something I think they need, given all those circumstances I just described to you. I was working in a drug service. It was Turning Point. It was some years back, and we saw more people using these chems, these drugs, but I hadn't really connected it to sexual health yet. I was just doing what I do in a drug service, which is, imagine if a heroin user comes into a heroin service and they're injecting heroin. It's kind of ticking a lot of high-risk boxes that we know what to do. But imagine if a heroin user was coming in, but they weren't injecting, just smoking. That kind of decreases the risk in that setting, but we still know that's kind of risky. I just heard Jim talking. No, I didn't. John talking, sorry. John talking. And I was thinking, if somebody presented to you using steroids, but they weren't injecting, they were only using oral steroids, how many risk boxes does that person tick? And what would you do with them? Well, we're drugs workers, we know what to do. We would do a behavioural intervention to help them reduce if that's what they want to do and explore their use. But wouldn't be ticking a whole lot of risk boxes in regard to public health. So just let me give you an example of why chemsex is a unique and different, complicated thing. You've got a drug service, okay, and there's two men sitting in the waiting room of this drug service. One of them is a heterosexual, street homeless, heroin injector, and he's hepatitis C positive, HIV negative, if I'm going to be slightly stereotypical, and he is going to tick a lot of high-risk boxes because he's a street homeless, possibly sharing needles, hepatitis C, transmission of C. That's ticking a lot of high-risk boxes. And in regard to public health, and to be crass, the cost attached to the public health, it might cost thousands of pounds to look after that guy in treatment and keep him in treatment. Sitting next to him in that drug service is a gay man, and he's a typical chemsexer. Then he's a gay man. He's sitting next to him. He's not injecting drugs. He's only using recreational drugs, not heroin. He's not street homeless. He's HIV negative. He's Hep C negative. He's got a job and partner owns his own home, and he's only using recreational drugs. It's only about twice a month, not dependently. He also is not going to tick a whole lot of high-risk boxes. You might have to work with that guy the same way you would with the non-injecting steroid users and behavioural interventions. And we're good in drug services. We'll do that job quite well. But if that gay man was sitting in front of me in a sexual health setting, or in an HIV sexual health setting, we're going to know and ask the right questions. We're going to know he's probably having sex with between, 3 and 15 people each time he uses. Very likely he's using those drugs, not using condoms. And if that's happening twice a month, we know, according to our algorithms, he's going to catch HIV within the next 3 to 6 months. And before we can test him and put him on treatment, he's going to infect others with HIV within the next possibly 30, 60 more within the next 6 to 9 months. Now, when we talk about public health, that's going to cost millions of pounds if you consider the onward transmission of HIV and a whole lot of other concerns too. In the sexual health setting, we will know immediately if that person needs PEP, even if he doesn't know what PEP is. We'll be able to ask the right questions about sexual history, and we'll know that he needs to be put on PEP, and we don't have to send him somewhere else to do it. We can do it right there on site. If, let's say, he was HIV positive and he was on treatment and he was overdosing or taking, frequently passing out from doing too much G, we could find out, is he doing too much G? Or is it just because he's doing exactly the right amount of GBL, but it's interacting with his HIV medicines? And we've got pharmacists to check that out as well. And there's a whole lot of other sort of sexual health skills that are in a sexual health setting that are the perfect kind of skills to help someone who's engaging in chemsex. And that's why, over the last 10 years, we've kind of focused the chemsex care in sexual health settings. Also because gay men just aren't going. In the early days, we were referring people to drug services. What the problems we were having was, I think it was the gay sex stuff, frankly. I think that we've been sending people to sometimes when we send someone to rehab and they spend 3 months in an amazing rehab and they learn all these extraordinary skills about the reasons for using them and the source of addiction and how to manage cravings, triggers, things, and they're out in the world again, and they're out in the gay world again, and grinders on their phone, and they're horny, they're intimate, they're trying to form intimate connections, trying to form relationships, hold social borders around clubbing, things like that, and very little they learn at the rehab sort of has geared them towards it. Did they learn how to write a profile differently to communicate their sexual and emotional needs, given the fact that there's HIV prevalence, a huge thing as part of that, given the fact that all the fear they're taking into the bedroom, the risk and danger around HIV high prevalence and things like that. So this is why most sexual health clinics have adopted chemsex as a place to be doing care. And also, the brilliant thing about drug services throughout the years, I mean, in 1960, when heroin was sort of getting bigger and bigger and bigger, drugs workers didn't just sit in the drug clinic twiddling their thumbs waiting for the drug users to come in and see them. We have this amazing history of going out into the streets to where the problems are presenting and finding the problems there. If they're not going to come into your clinics, then they're going to be on the streets, and that we went out to find them. So it's a really extraordinary, beautiful kind of history in regard to care. And when it comes to chemsex, we can't just sit and wait for them to come to the drug services for help either, especially as a population of people that's not identifying a problem at all, having the best access to it. Thank you very much, don't tell them otherwise. And they will, where are the problems presenting? Well, I'd like to say bedrooms, but actually no, that's where the fun is happening. It's not where the problems are presenting. The problems are presenting in the sexual health clinics. So I work at 5016 Street, and how I came to be working there was I had been in the drug service, seeing more people coming in, hadn't connected it to sexual health and HIV. And I popped by 5016 Street, where I work now. It was 2010. It was the Thursday before Easter, just by coincidence. And I asked the nurses in the PEP clinic, that's where they prescribed PEP that day, to ask them questions differently. I said, have you heard about these new drugs? And they said, yeah. I said, have you heard about chemsex? I said, what's that? I said, well, have you heard about gay men using these kinds of drugs? They said, yes, we are seeing lots more of that. It's quite worrying. And I said, good. They said, we think we're on top of it. Can we talk more and see if we can, make sure we're on top? I said, yeah, sure. I popped back 4 days later after the Easter bank holiday weekend to the PEP clinic, and 33 people showed up for PEP that day. It's pretty normal for us. We do about 30 PEPs a day to gay men. That's how many risks are happening up there. And I asked them, the nurses, to ask the questions differently. Do you use party drugs for sex? With a big smile on their face. Are you having a good time? What's your favourite one? And I go, yeah, I'm having a good time. Don't have a problem at all. Love it. Yes. On that day, after Easter bank holiday, 33 people showed up for PEP. All gay men, and every single one had been using chems for sex over that weekend. That's when they thought, wow, 3 days ago we thought we had this under control. And today we realise 100% of our PEPs are resulting from chem use. That was 33 people we prevented from catching HIV that one day. We do 30 every day. So it's now 2015, we have 3,000 gay men coming to our clinic every month that use chems, these 3 particular drugs. Very few of them are walking in saying, help me with chemsex, please. And we were waiting for clinics and drug services around the world to just assess, is chemsex a problem? Are people coming in saying, help me with chemsex? You're not going to get any idea about the scale of chemsex in the population if you wait for them. So we are asking the sexual health clinics. We prescribe 200 PEPs every month to people directly following a chemsex situation. And we diagnose between 40 and 60 gay men with HIV every month as well. And about 60 to 80% of those are following chemsex, are associated with chems. So we know it's happening a lot. Some of you may have seen that bastard chemsex film that I've been involved in, which has changed my life completely in a bad way. But I had the pleasure of travelling the world with that film and sitting in front of 700-seat auditoriums with lots of gay men, some film buffs and health professionals too, but lots of gay men. So it gives me an opportunity to find out how much chemsex is happening around the world. Because the clinics are saying, yeah, no one's walking in with their hand up saying help with chemsex, it's not happening in our city. And then you go to these auditoriums and gay communities are saying, everyone's doing it, help, 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 help. So we're waiting for the data to catch up. Now the problem we have in sexual health clinics is we can't do it without you. Because nurses are brilliant, and most, not all, but most clinics in England have a team of health advisors. And a health advisor's job it's kind of a gorgeous job actually. If you have had gonorrhea 3 times in the last year, and the nurse notices that, she could just give you gonorrhea medicine and send you out there again to catch it again if you want to come back again and again and again. There's a revolving door. No, that's not what public health is. What public health is we identify if you're having lots of risks and lots of infections, and you talk with a health advisor. Who's a nice trained person that can talk to you about your sex life. Are you enjoying it? Is it having a good time? We would like you to enjoy it even more, but with less risks. We don't want you to have to come to the clinic every couple of months because you're taking risks that we can help you avoid. They're talking about gay sex. That's another interesting thing about sexual health clinic is that throughout the last 30 or so years of an HIV epidemic, gay men have formed amazing relationships with sexual health clinics. It's where they go to talk about gay sex really easily, in droves. And that's something we want to capitalise on because gay sex is a big part of this drug problem. You can't really do an intervention of any kind unless you can talk about gay sex really easily and understand all those risks that happen that I've been talking about. All the problems about trying to use Grindr and get kind of the sex you want when it's so damn new and complicated. And that's what they do in sexual health clinics all the time. And that's what health advisors do. And health advisors have been taking up the burden of doing these chemsex interventions. They talk about chemsex really easily. But they don't know about craving management. They don't know how to help someone identify triggers and respond to them differently, respond to craving differently. They don't know these kinds of things. They don't know safe injecting techniques. And they don't know, well, a whole lot of other things that you do know. This is why it becomes a perfect need for the perfect multidisciplinary team. So there's a lot of pop-up clinics happening around chemsex, and they are in sexual health clinics mostly. But the best ones are formed of these multidisciplinary teams that involve, they're the nurses that do the front line work. They're the ones who identify chemsex. I mentioned that 3,000 come to our clinic every month that are using chems. But only 100 out of those 3,000 say, yeah, I'll talk to someone about it, okay. It's a really small number. So we're putting the band-aids on, we're prescribing the medicines, we're stopping the infections for a whole lot of people, but we're not doing a lot of intervention work. So what the perfect model of a chemsex sort of pop-up clinic might be a sexual health clinic that has the nurses asking the frontline questions. Do you use party drugs for sex sometimes? Do you want to, what's your favourite one? Are you having a good time? Do you want to talk to someone about it? No? Okay, cool. But if that changes, if you have a rotten Monday, if you feel a bit, if you're missed at work, or if you find you're getting too many sexually terminated, or if you want to talk to us about making changes, come back. And they usually say, no, I can stop anytime I want, stop talking to me about it. But a week or a month or 3 months later, they do come back because they remember the smiling nurse who wasn't judgmental and said, we can talk about gay sex and all that good stuff. And so our clinic has the nurses and it has the health advisors, but it has also got a rep from our nearest drug service, Turning Point, the one I used to work for. So when someone's using problematically, like beyond just recreational, maybe every day or dependently, or when there's real sort of hardcore addiction stuff underneath, not just recreational sex, then when there's injecting use going on, where there's addiction problems like dependence problems like GBL is very dangerously physically, and you need someone that knows how to refer someone and do a proper assessment for a referral. That's when we need the expertise of drugs workers right there with us on site. But on the site where the most common risks happen, like where the PEPs happen, where the assessments happen, where the drug-drug interaction between HIV medicines can happen. If a heterosexual woman is using methadone, she goes out partying, she does some methadone, and she has sex because she's horny on the drug or happy on the drug more than she would like, or has some things she's less likely to be at such a high risk of HIV as she would a gay man. She's sort of less likely to have as many partners as gay men do, but that's a bit of a judgment for me to say. Actually, gay men do have a high number of partners and can compact them into a smaller number of times, and can do that with the help of their grinder level. So the risks are just phenomenal. So chemsex is usually just defining sort of gay men, and the definition of it is a sort of comorbid and syndemic mixture of gay historical culture and issues associated with the HIV stigma, internalized homophobia, different kind of understanding of sex and relationships. I think if a woman who is using methadone came into your drug service today, you do a brilliant job. You can talk about heterosexual sex, it's not going to, there's no unique things that they might figure out, and you know how to do the risks you might be exposed to, and you know how to do the intervention of behaviour change around the methadone. But with regard to MSM and the particular high risk and the public health concern that that's representing in regard to infectious diseases, we really need to reshape it all up. So we need the drugs worker from you to hook up with your local sexual health clinic, help them identify this, help them respond and do that kind of stuff. But you also need to contact your gay charity or your local HIV service, because you need also someone in clinic who can talk about what it's like to be 18 and horny and on Grindr and with no friends on a Saturday night. And what the communication is going to be like. Because if that 18-year-old is going to say, I'll tell you an interesting story. I had a mum brought a 15-year-old son in to see me a while back. And she said, he's found Vauxhall, which is where all the clubs have in London, and he's taking ecstasy. Make him stop. So can you leave the room firstly? And I had a chat with him. So I had a chat with him, started talking about what he wanted. So what do you want on a Saturday night when you go out to these clubs to do? He goes, I don't know, I want to have a good time. I was like, okay, that's good. That's what it's all about, I guess. What defines a good time for you? Is it, he goes, I don't know, I just want to have a good time. I was like, is that about the music? Getting into the groove? Is it about being in a community of gay men? Is it about feeling sexy and having a shirt on and feeling part of that crowd? Is it about meeting someone at the end? Is it about going home with someone for a one-night stand? Or is it about going to a sauna? Is it about going home and doing your homework because you're 15 years old? And he was like, gee, I never really thought about that. So, well, great. I'm so glad your mum brought me here because we can talk about what makes a good time for you. So what sort of drugs or alcohol, what do you need on the dance floor? Because it turned out to be about the music. You really liked Rihanna. And some other things. So I said, well, can you do that sober? He laughed at me and called me old. And I said, well, what would you do? Because I don't know, what do people give me? I was like, yikes, okay, I don't think anyone's going to give me heroin on the dance floor. But I said, my job is to give you some information about drugs. And so you can know the harms and you can make an informed choice. And I can help you use them as safely as possible if you are going to use them at all. That's what we do. And he's like, oh, I never really thought about that. I'm telling you this story because chemsex is the same thing. The 18 or 45-year-old guy who's horny on a Saturday night, got his grinder on his phone, very easy available chems there. He's horny, and I might say, well, what do you want when you feel horny on a Saturday night? He goes, I don't know. So our job as a multidisciplinary team, what key work would be involving would be, what do you want from your sex life? Do you like kissing someone? Do you like to be a one-night stand? Do you like having coffee with them in the morning, even if you're never going to see them again? Do you like kind of arguing over who's going to use the bathroom first? Do you want it to be a date? Do you have better sex when you know them a better, and it is a second date? Or even if you've had a drink for an hour with them first, does that make a better sex than just showing up at a stranger's doorstep? No, I never really thought about that. So that's part of what key work is in chemsex, is about talking about gay sex and things like that. So it doesn't need multidisciplinary. Sometimes it needs a gay dude from gay charities. Sometimes it needs a sexual health worker familiar with HIV prevalence and risks that are. I think sometimes it needs a drugs worker because some of these drugs are really, 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 really harmful. I could talk some more, but putting it into context, I think we'll just jump to the film that I've got because I can talk about the context and try to describe a little bit what it's like or what it's like, but this film kind of puts that into context for you. This is a motivational interviewing training film. So we all know what that is. You know, when you're in a room with someone, you want them to make changes because you can see the harm, whereas if they can't. And we're not trying to force behaviour change upon them, but we're trying to get them to reflect on what they want from their sex and romantic lives in regard to chemsex. Reflect on the pros and cons of the drugs they're using. Sometimes we do that right, sometimes we're challenged too much and they go, and then everybody come back to clinic again. So motivational interviewing is about keeping them in the room. So this film is about that. It's kind of like a training video of what motivational interviewing is for the chemsex situation. But also the guy in the film is just so brilliant that it kind of gives you an idea of what chemsex is like. So sorry for those of you that have seen it before. You can see. Can we turn the lights down at all if we need to do that? But just quickly before, because there is something I'll show too, before I'll come back to it. I'll come back to the slides in a bit, because we have a site called chemsexsupport.com, chemsexsupport.com. We've got training videos, one like this, but like 11 others. So if you've got a client that you're not really sure how to work with because it's chemsex and he is having cravings at 2 in the morning and you're not open, you're not there, and you're not really sure how to manage cravings around sexual urges and things like that. So there's a load of videos that can coach him through craving management and stuff like that. But also a lot of tools like a care plan. You've all worked with care plans before. We've adapted one so it's particularly appropriate for chemsex, and that's downloadable on there too. And a whole lot of other resources for you. So it's chemsexsupport.com. So half an hour of me talking hasn't made you chemsex experts. There's more help on that website. Hi Gavin, my name's David. I believe you're a sexual health worker and asked you to come speak with me.
Yeah, I don't know why.
They might have thought, I think if there are drugs involved, they sometimes suggest you can have a chat with someone just to make sure you're being as safe as possible.
Yeah, I'm totally fine. I'm safe with what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. What's your favourite drug?
Favourite drug for what? Sex or going out with sex? Tina.
Okay, crystal meth.
Crystal, yeah.
And it's used mostly for sex, is it?
Yeah, sex is wicked on Tina, yeah. I really enjoy it.
You have a good time?
Yeah.
That's important. We're going to enjoy our sex lives.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Do you inject or smoke?
I slam.
Slamming, that's a nice way of putting it, saying injecting, I guess. Less scary.
Yeah.
How long do you usually stay awake for when you're on these benders?
It depends. Could be 2 days, 3 days. I've done it for 4 or 5 sometimes.
Does it sometimes get a bit trippy or scary towards the final days?
I'm fine. I know what I'm doing. I'm safe. I know what I'm doing. Some other lads might get a bit freaked out on it, but I know what I'm doing, so I can look after them, help them through it.
Oh, that's good of you. Crystal meth psychosis or drug-induced psychosis is really common with crystal meth. It can be really scary for some people, and it is very common. Some people can feel unsafe, apparently. I'm glad you're helping people do that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're not feeling it yourself too much.
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, I know you didn't want to be here, but since you are, do you mind if I ask you some questions about your sex life? It helps me put things in perspective.
Sure,
Thanks. When did you last have sober sex?
Sober sex?
Let's say sex without any ends, like crystal meth or methadone.
I don't know, a few years back, maybe 3 years, 4 years.
It's a long
I
time.
mean, I prefer it with, so I don't see the point in having it without.
Okay. What do you think other people enjoy about sober sex? What do you think other people get from it, or the benefits of sober sex are?
I don't know, I mean, I prefer it with it, so
Okay.
I'm fine.
Do you remember the last person that you had? I know it's hard to remember how long ago it was, but do you remember the event or the time or the person?
Yeah, I think so.
Did you enjoy it?
No. I think the HIV thing was an issue, so it was playing in his mind and it wasn't that great, so move on.
Okay. find that something you experience with chemsex?
Definitely not, no, because it's not usually spoken about.
Okay, and you prefer it that way?
Well, yeah, it's easier.
Okay. When was the last time you had a relationship?
Boyfriend?
Yeah.
5 years back, I think.
That's a long time as well.
Yeah.
Was it a nice relationship? Did it end badly?
Started off well, yeah. I mean, it finished, but yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the first month. I imagine it was pretty good in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Meals out, cinema, watching the soaps on the sofa together, lived with each other for a bit, yeah. It was nice.
That does sound nice. Sounds like you were close.
Yeah, pretty close, yeah.
That's a nice kind of intimacy, and that kind of intimacy is very important to our self-esteem and what makes us feel valuable, and I'm glad you remember that well. Do you get any of that stuff from your chemsex experiences?
Well, I don't invite people to come round and sit and watch a soap, if that's what you mean. But it's a different kind of intimacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did the drug use kind of accelerate after the end of that relationship?
Yeah, that's when I started to get a lot more guys online, that kind of thing.
Right. You talked about the intimacy and the closeness of the early part of that relationship and how you're not really getting that much now.
Yeah, but it's a different kind. I'm quite happy with it.
Okay. Well, if you wanted to incorporate some of that stuff, some people, it can be really important to our self-esteem, feeling valuable and worthwhile. When was the last time somebody slept over with you or shared a meal with you?
I can't remember.
You were smiling a lot and you seemed to get into a happy place when you reflected back on the early days of that relationship, and these things are important. My job here is to help people reflect on what they want from their sex lives, what they want from their sex and romantic lives, and to help incorporate things like that into their lives if they want to. Perhaps incorporating sober sex into your sex life, or just making some changes if you want, because you're contributing a lot more to somebody in a sexual situation than just the physicality of it. You know, there's a whole lot of other really sexy things about you that it'd be cool if people got the opportunity to know those things about you. And if you wanted to go away perhaps and reflect on some of those things,
Yeah.
and we're here every week, you can come back and talk to us if you wanted to talk about those things.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely think about it.
Okay. He's such a nice guy, and that kind of that's typical of me. What I find interesting about this video is I'm not a therapist, and sometimes when I'm inviting people to put more sex expertise or skill into their services, it becomes like a discussion amongst commissioners and a chance to raise money, and people being convinced that I'm not qualified to do that. We're talking about a population of people that at D Street Express, which is one of our clinics, we have 500 people through D Street Express every day. One of our young nurses there, one nurse is going to be quite busy. She might see between 30 and 50 people in one day, you know, in a double shift there. And the first guy would come in and say, hi, I was at a sauna. I had a lot of guys there. I was there for a couple of days, did some chems, had an amazing time, but I think I've got gonorrhea. Can you sort me out, please? The hours I can't remember, I passed out from G for a little bit. There were still guys around, so I can't tell you everything about how I caught it or what was going on, but, medicine, please. And the nurse is thinking, yikes, she wants to talk to him about so many things. Did he consent to sex? Was he able to? Did he say he passed out from G? And what's going on in that sauna where people might, he might have been unconscious, but he was just too high to be consenting. And, but she's got 40 people waiting outside, and he's saying, don't judge me. It happened last month, it'll happen next month too. It's normal for us. Don't judge our sex life. Just give him my medicine, please. And the next one comes in, he needs PEP because he had an exposure to HIV, and the nurse needs to know the status, the HIV status of the person that was involved, and were condoms involved, and were they on medicine, were they undetectable? And so she might ask if the person's accompanying them in the waiting room, could we invite them in, or can we contact them on the phone? And goes, I don't know who it was, geez, I might be lucky if I knew his grinder name. Could be any 1 or 10 guys, like I didn't have last month, I'll be doing it next month too. Just give them a medicine, please, and don't do it alone. And so we have conversations, 40 more throughout the day, all very similar presentations. These aren't guys who are identifying a problem with drugs, or even identifying a problem with their sex lives, or what their work, or what they think their sex and romantic lives should be like. And we as a clinic have very earnest meetings, as with other sexual health clinics around the world, about not being complicit in this poor sense of sexual worth that this community is developing as a result of the 40 years of traumatic HIV epidemic and other circumstances. And really, really strong conversations about that. This guy was one of them too, so it does fall on us to sort of, we're not to be complicit in this, but also to walk the cautious line of introducing them to what they're worth. And that's what a chemsex kind of intervention is. And you don't get trained for that. If you had some of you might have daughters, if you've got a 13 or 14-year-old daughter and her school friends are starting to have sex or talk about it in school, and are doing it, sometimes getting pressure from the boys to do it, maybe at 14, 15 years old. This is worrying. Now, what sort of professional do you want your daughter or sister sitting in front of in that situation? I'd really like them to have a big sister, really, or a big brother that can talk to them about just about sex and what they're worth and boundaries and things like that. It's kind of a big brother, a big sister kind of role that's important. I think that's what's needed here. So if you think you need to leave to here today and talk to commissioners to get some money together, get some training together, and if someone's going to come in and see you on Monday because you're chemsex, you're going to say, yes, but I'm not ready because I haven't had my training, I'm not qualified yet. I would say, looking at your lovely faces and knowing your pedigree and where you work and what you've done, if it was my younger gay brother, yeah, I would love him to sit and talk to any one of you just about sex and what he's worth and what it could be like. That'd be fine with me. That'd be more than fine. I don't want you to find the right professional for him to sit in front of who you think is qualified to do that. I think you can do it. I would trust you completely. Do you trust yourselves?
Yeah.
That's support. Let's all do it in our own services, and let's do it tomorrow. Yeah? Okay.
David know about the new prison service, and would he like to sell it for us?
Tell me about it.
So, prison is on UT specific service, just launched a couple of weeks ago. So we've got a drop-in that's in the Gate Village rather than Bristol, so away from the main project. Looking to do, well, we're already doing the exchange and stuff, quite similar to voluntary.
Yeah,
we're happy, grateful to get on this.
You have it already, but I want to come and visit. Can I come and visit?
And we've got information about Prism over there.
We're over there, by the sides.
Okay.
What about the demographics of
Prevalence, you mean?
Yeah.
No, there is some, the Gay Men's Sex Survey was very, many thousands of people that would just, they say that it's not too prevalent in Bristol, the use of these drugs, because they are relying on people who fill out, the type of person that fills out sex surveys anyway. There's very few of our patients actually doing that. But then, no, I can't. I've got friends who are from Bristol, and if you want to know, log on to Grindr tomorrow. Spend an hour waiting to see if anyone offers you cans, and spend the other hour actively seeking them. See what happens. That's the best way to find it. Tell me then, what's the prevalence like in Bristol? It's happening? I know it is here, I know.
The chemsex part is massive.
Is it?
Massive. And it's not that far behind London. Go and find on Saturday night, every station H.
Okay.
But I do really feel that the right questions aren't being answered sexually.
Yeah.
That's why it's not happening.
Okay. I was here 2 weeks ago and I'm coming back again to talk to the health sector, so let's all fix that. Because everyone in this room perhaps could call up your local sexual health clinic and invite them to a meeting to see how you can help them, or vice versa, address this problem that you say actually happens in the city. They need you to tell them that, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.